Everybody back on? Okay, so I'll just once again remind council that speak clearly and towards the owl when you're speaking. Hopefully we might get better sound transmission. So I'll start with my budget message. I expect that each member of council has had the opportunity to review the draft budget that was sent out on February 12th, 2021. I would like to thank Michelle and Andrew for the time and effort they put into bringing forward a draft operations budget that is status quo as directed by resolution of council. It was not easy delivering this budget without an increase when there were budget pressures as a result of increased insurance rates, a significant increase in our Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center costs, and the construction of the new public works garage in Home Lake. I would expect that council will have some questions about some of the budget numbers. However, I would remind council that staff delivered exactly what council directed. Staff attempted to make it easier for council by identifying some of the significant budget item challenges in red. While this appears to be a good news budget, I must emphasize to council that the reality is the township has a capital plan deficit that goes beyond just addressing the provincial requirements. Previous years of avoiding tax increases for capital reserves has resulted in the asset condition index of our roads to decline, leaving our roads in disrepair, in some cases to the point of needing complete rebuild. If our council continues with practice, we are passing on this deficit to the next council. In addition, our public works and fire department equipment reserves are inadequate. And in 2023, we are required to have a building asset plan with building reserves. In conclusion, the real challenge we face today is deciding what we will be contributing to capital reserves in order to ensure stability for our municipality's financial future. I have a resolution that council accepts the mayor's budget message as presented. I'm going to go over to seconder, moved by Councilor Burns, seconded by Councilor Robinson. Comments or questions? Can I get a training copy of the budget before we start, please? There should be one on your desk. Was it one of your desks? Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Call the roll, Councilor Buckwell. Yes. Councilor Burns. Yes. Councilor Robinson.
Yes.
Councilor Reggie Schoenfeld.
Yes.
Yes, that's carried. Thank you. So I have a resolution that we move towards the budget presentation. I'll read the resolution after we have the budget presented.
So we're just getting going here. Okay, just an introduction to the budget. The mayor said, this is a balanced budget. There's no increase in levy in all this budget. We worked, we think this is a part of the budget that we try to be inclusive. So no increases in here other than increases that. There's no increase to pass. One thing that we found when going through the budget, we started to put our own information for red flags. And once we started the red flags, I had to go back to one on this because this is the real. So this is really points out where the drivers are when they're increasing or decreasing in the budget. So we really advise council to put on those red flags because that's where the money is. The other thing the mayor spoke about is probably environment situation with reserves. And as council remember from our discussions last year, just on the deficit from 2017 and roads on repair, that deficit is $15 million. You have a lot to look at for roads. We put $500,000 in there as a roads reserve contribution. That's the only contribution you're making, so council needs to look, good enough, reserves for other areas, and that would be above and beyond 2%, what's going to be presented here. Just on that 15 million, you know, if you contributed $1 million a year just to get those 50 million in 15 years, and you just have a backlog, well done. But if you into the asset cycle, you need to be working on those roads again, so it's a very big thing. But every year that council avoids doing it, it's something that council's been inherited here for many years. Another year, it's going to be more difficult. What I would like to stress here, the most important thing that you need to look at is your reserve contribution. We put the buckets up because we're talking about the bucket system. We want to make sure that we're really aware of the buckets. From staff's perspective, we've given you the best that we believe we can do. The rest of it is yours to choose, you know, where you're going to go with this question. So I'll give it over to Michelle. She's going to do just an overview of each section, and if there's questions, you can.
All of them staff and really like always do the 2020 budget discussion. All members of the board provided a copy of this budget. I hope you did have an opportunity to go through it. So I will just be doing going through the review at this point in time. Again, you said, if you have any questions, we will come back to them and at the end of the presentation. First, I give an executive summary of the budget. So, and as Andrew mentioned, any items that we thought should be brought to council's attention have been highlighted in red on the presentation. So, budget presented for 2021, the revenue was approximately $7 million. So $6,968,590. One item we did want to bring to council was the amount of grants that will be that's has revenue for this year. And for expenses, the expenses total $6,968,591. The budget is presented. And the one item we did want to highlight in expenses is roads construction. So this year we have budgeted $2.2 million. Then we'll just do a quick overview of Wilberforce. So we have the permanent population of 2,469 residents. And we have 1,900 households. And on the slide, you can see breakdown based on population. The township has a net book of approximately $19 million. Our total assessment this year is approximately $503 million, which we have to raise levy taxes. This assessment is broken down as approximately 9% residential, 6% farm, 2% commercial, 1% industrial, 1% municipal. So as you see from this, the majority of our municipality is residential based. And so next slide. So approximately 45% of township revenue comes from taxation. Okay. So in 2021, the budget does include a small increase in the taxation revenue. It's approximately 1%. So we will be raising $3,136,200 through taxation this year. This is in line with what we put in 2020. A good portion of our revenue is based on continuing grants. Maybe that's what we will be using this year. Federal gas grant is in the amount of $177,000. We hope to receive a candidate grant in the amount of $2,000. We will be utilizing $290,000 from the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. This is to be allocated for transportation projects. Our prevention funding this year, totals $598,200. And we also hope to receive the Canada Summer Jobs grant in the amount of $1,000 to offset our summer students. So the budget that's presented in 2021, we hope to raise $2,536,660 through grants. As you can see from the slide, what has been highlighted here is that in 2020, we had budgeted to use $942,000 for the Let's Cemetery Road. This project wasn't started in 2020, but those funds will be used for in 2021. I also like to point out that we have included the CIP COVID-19 grant in the amount of $100,000. Now we are still waiting for approval on this grant. This funding will be used for the Golden Trail, the Mystic Park, the Bishop Park, and the Beacon Road Market. Then we will look at these other charges and other incomes. For 2021, we will raise $318,600 through this funding. And after this is growth, then we budgeted last year. We will be with $931,031 from reserve for the 2020 budget.
Your sheet may be reflective of $1 million.
There has been. So, of course, these reserves will come from the modernization fund that was received in 2021. This is government funding received. It's not literally from message. We will also be using reserve for road projects. The next item to review is wages. The wage cost total $1.1 We've also provided a updated organization. Taxes review. So those are the items that make up the revenue that the municipality will receive for 2021.
Michelle, can I just suggest maybe that if we do questions on that portion before we move on to the next one?
So again, Jeff,
This one, yeah,
The
the,
first part.
so the funding and grants, where you said the ICIP COVID-19, we were $100,000. You're anticipating we're getting that, or 90% you're getting that, or just
So,
Okay, so that grant we have. And just an interest, or not an interest, important to the council, we've applied for that grant, and yes, we think we're going to get the grant. But we put it on the revenue side. The other part of the grant is applying the interpretation, the expense side. So there's a $20,000 contribution from regular reserves. If we don't get the grant, we just don't take the $20,000 in, so it's a one equals the other, so putting that in, and even if we don't get it, it's already counted.
okay, so then we're not necessarily gonna be at $100,000, we're gonna have.
Only if you.
Yeah. Okay, the fees, there's represent income. And then it's the 1, 2, 3, 4th one down, what's the miscellaneous revenue? What would that be? Yeah, it's 1,151. Okay.
so yes, so, I think the categories, if you want to have a level to it, so, I put the actual based on what the current is. So some of these may, be in other categories.
So when I look at the down a little more, the sale of equipment and land, so last year we budgeted we were gonna sell stuff
Yes,
at a total 80, we didn't sell anything. So this year we said 50, why wouldn't we still keep it at 50?
that the state, funding for 2021. If you sell those items and you see additional funding, that can be put into certain reserve at the end of the year.
Probably just go a little bit further, and we do plan to install equipment and. That's what, let's say, we council regarding stuff, and if they have put, and then let's say it's 150,000, then that would have been spent someplace else in the budget. And if you didn't sell land, then you were out that money. So this way, we didn't want to overinflate any revenues. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, since I've been on council, we talked about selling surplus stuff, and it doesn't seem like we've sold surplus. And I mean, we want the money into reserves, and I think that's something that's really important to do. Okay. And I have another question. Can we go to that, organizational chart? Okay, so on the bottom, so are we anticipating in 2021 2 seasonal winter operators then? Because the last organizational chart last week was good one. I just wanted to know.
We had a different assignment for the other first employee, which is required an occasional person. Like, so it's what exists more.
So we're not necessarily anticipating that for next one.
Well, this is 2021, and right now we have a person that's doing that within late.
I was thinking like when I see 2021, the budget for 2021 is really 2022, right? That's not the year.
No, our budget ends at the end of the year, so it's next 2021.
Right. Still, this off so November, December. Okay, thanks for clarification.
Council Bird?
Under grants, I'm not, about 69 down, I want to regulatory zones. Is that a new grant for coming up for? In 2020, we didn't budget nothing for that.
With the revenue.
It's revenue. So it's funding we receive, based on the amount of gravel that has been sold in our municipality.
And that was only last year. Was that before?
We did receive funding in 2020.
But 2020, was that the first year that was started, or was it more?
The only place, the only time that we can find is allocated. If the team participating, if we got that last year, that we did the same this year.
That was sold in our township.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And while we're there, I just, the gas tax rebate, so it doubled for this year, do we know that for sure? Or-
It's a carryover.
Oh, it's a carryover, okay, thanks.
If you want,
Any other questions on the revenue events? Seeing none, yes, we can go on.
Cancer. So the first one is chemical. So in my case, I think the council budget. The items to point out the problem not be. Which will now be, the. This is. So we budget 135,000, for expenses.
Right, okay. So the notes above say that the public relations is going to include all donations, but we still have donation line. On the public relations line. Should that be consolidated into 550K?
So no, actually, if we did budget it, for council expenses. Plus. So.
Oh, sorry, let's look at the printed copy.
Yeah. So we did budget for publications.
And while we're there as well, council salaries and benefits, they used to be two separate lines, now you combine them, I'm assuming that's what.
They have been combined into one line. You will see for 2020, actual was 93,000. The amount has increased slightly, just, for council, we have budgeted the council one.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Michelle. I'm still not understanding why we have a donations council and a public relations council. My understanding is they were all both the same.
Okay.
Just based on the comments
I see the comments, yeah,
in the paragraph.
Yeah.
Now, once that's changed,
for 2021, we did budget the two lines. And that's what.
Councilor,
And just clarification, Michelle, so before, salaries were like one line and benefits were another one. So did you just combine in 2020? Is that something we did between the, was done in 2020? And any idea why we budgeted for 85 and it was ended up to be 93?
Usually the matter and have more meetings.
But we don't get.
We only get paid so much a month, so. Like, that's one thing I have a problem with is, council being over their own budget or something. That's their job, I think, in the budget. Being $7,000 over on a year like last year, you couldn't go to any conference and stuff like that.
So your conferences is a different line. So last year in conferences, the actual was 2,233.
And then even why we increased 105,000 for next year? Like, I mean, if we were at 93,000, or let's say 94,000 this year, that actually happened, why don't we just budget for 94,000 for the following year? for 2021, because a lot of our costs in council, I believe, are fixed, right? Like, I mean, we get so much a month pay, and we're eligible for so many benefits, right? It's not like those are gonna be changed. And when you say, and then if we go down to the next line, council conferences and meetings, so if, let's just say, I did go somewhere, and I was gone a day, and my days paid would come out of the $12,000, would that be?
So maybe just to move along, the clerk can come back at the next meeting, that revised, it has to be revised and adjusted.
Okay, because I
To bring the information forward.
so I mean, a big person, 5,000 here, 5,000 there, so to me, if we are able to do it, with finding $4,000, I feel comfortable saying.
Could we do with 95,000? Just remember that.
So the clerk is going to come back and make sure that everything covers and will be done.
Okay, thank you. Sure, that would be great.
That means you were not even allocated.
Right, good idea.
Yes, that was good.
Election material supplies. When I was on council, the last council, we only took 45,000 a year away from the election year to spend next year. And this year, this year we haven't been doing it. So next year, we're gonna get hit with a big number for election.
So we will be discussing reserve a little later in the meeting. Okay, so this $1,200 has to pay a portion of your election. So, we have been doing that for a number of years. But we can discuss any further. That's in reserve a little later.
Yeah, and I think the 45, the transfer bird is still going in, but it's going in as a reserve contribution. This is for material and supplies.
Where to show that going.
Because that comes later in the presentation.
Okay. Thank you.
Then we'll look at treasury administration and so this is for the update to the zoning bylaw and and we get transit starting with one session.
May I ask what is a reward just on holding to?
We'll go through, is this the whole admin budget?
Yes, this is Gregory again, yes.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
So overall, the budget is $1,170,000. This. So one of the items that we did want to highlight was, we have allocated $155,700. We are using the modernization fund, to fund this, line item. So then if we look at the budget for 2021 versus 2020, when we take that amount into consideration, the budget, 2020 is actually less than what was, budget in 2020.
Councilor Recreational.
Yeah, I think it just needs some, clarification, so maybe a third of the way down where it says a mid-tile drain, what is that expense for?
Okay, so, we do have one resident that has entered into the tile grading loan program.
Right.
Okay, so that's, it's a line item that's shown on the revenue side and on the expense.
Okay, that's good, I was just wanting to clarify, and then, now maybe 2/3 of the way down where it says amid advertising. So any idea why we budgeted for 4,000, but it went up so significantly?
So,
So was it 4,000 and the actual was 7,273, and then we budgeted this year for 7,000?
so yeah, so in last year, we budgeted 4,000, the actual in 2020, 7,200. So that's why we increased the budget slightly.
Any idea why it got over budget by so much?
Money will see further down in public works.
Okay.
That, it looks like the money was allocated in public works. That can happen within the whole thing, but it's also the anticipation doing the similar amount of contracts and information things that we did last year. So basically mirroring what we did last year.
Okay. Okay, so I maybe kind of explain that, the zoning bylaw update, so we set money away so we can, so are we looking at like updating number bylaws, or that's just money in reserve to help pay for wages, or
So that's the zoning bylaw.
the zoning bylaw?
And that's the zoning bylaw.
And it's been in there for a couple of years.
Okay, I just haven't used it yet, and that's like the Golden Lake.
That's right.
Okay, good. I was thinking, I saw that, I was just thinking.
And the reading just for clarification, because of COVID, they couldn't do the updates last year, and it's just been carried over then.
And then just the last thing, just clarification, so on the second page, what a digital service squad member, and then after 35, and then the next year, we budgeted for 5,200.
So that's the grant that the municipality applied for last year,
Right.
To hire a digital squad member to help businesses become more digital aware.
So then we received a grant for $285.
So we received the grant for $5,250. We spent a little bit of it in 2020, I believe it was around.
Then we carried it over to 2020.
Carried it over.
Okay, thanks for that clarification, because I was trying to figure.
Councilor Robinson, you have a question?
Actually, that's.
I think we're good. Oh, Councilor Bernard.
When we remain on the contract, last year we had people working on the contract, we're gonna have people again this year working on the contract for 20,000?
We anticipate that's going to drop considerably.
Will be.
The 20,000 will still be reduced?
So last year, $49,000. This year we budgeted $20,000.
Is that why I'm staying in there?
At this time, if the council would like some more detail.
Okay. So, if I can add a 2021, it's the, so, we'd like to, for.
Councilor Richardson.
So, just double checking, so we have a coordinator and then we have 3 other possible bylaw officers, correct?
There's no way to coordinate unless we, so the only work that we want is Thursday. To come in and then it's called.
And then the other bylaw officers, do they have all of their necessary training, or is there other training that they're gonna need?
So all of the bylaw officers that we have, most of the training we were going to do in one segment, which is only in-house. We couldn't do that last year. And that's
They come from all their appropriate,
here.
The actual cost for last year was 13,419. Would that include all the training too?
So it included training and included gear. So basically the 34,000 last year is more extreme. And now we found that we can comfortably go with the 20,000 and we still have a little bit of training we can do.
So And the one I just, that the one highlight is 250,000, will be used for, so that's the capital. The budget in 2020, however, it wasn't received, so it's used. So when we take that into consideration, the budget amount is actually less than
Councilor Anderson.
So the fire capital of $250,000, that is fire and fire truck, right?
that's the big portion, and then, but you're also financing over 5 years.
And then what's the fire equipment capital? That's a new addition of $60,000.
So that's the number of capital items that the does want.
Give them.
Okay, and then one last thing. I'm gonna be listening. How come their wages increased by $14,000 a bit? Was more expensive this year, like, are they getting paid differently? Was there something weird?
So the wages are based on office.
Okay, so they're more pilots this year?
And we also now have a fire commission.
How can you decide what the compliment is? Like, is there some fire people that say you got a municipality this big, therefore you should have, or would be nice to have?
So we do a policy with this. And so it's getting up to that compliment that is determined.
That's right, by the township, is one that I think.
That was set.
And do they get paid like on the days or the nights when they go for training? Is it just a set amount or is it so much an hour?
They do get very paid for training,
Or is it, like,
based on the amount of time.
so yeah, like the, like per hour? Or their meetings and stuff like that?
Asking the 250,000, some of that's coming out of reserve. Is it not more advantageous to finance that whole amount?
We do have the ability this year to pay off. So, whatever. So, you see when we get the goals, we get. And take that decision to get a break.
I mean, I just think a fire truck is out of 20 years life, and interest rates being as low as they are right now. It's advantageous to finance in my opinion.
And possibly that how they can buy.
That's what it's doing.
The 65,000, that was for the renovation hall, that will be on the capital for 2020.
Yes, that's the ball.
That's 100.
So it was like 90,000 and then. Well, what was in there for the 90,000?
Well, keep in mind that you also purchased
Oh, that's right.
bumper here. There's a number of items that we overview is the inspector, CMP. So if you look at so the budget for 2021 is 69,900. When we look at the budget, there was one, we did one for That's the first of the dog kennel trailer. If you know, the $25,000. This group is full. Because currently we are paying the animal control expenses. This is budget, we budgeted. Those items. It was purchasing this trailer for 4 or 5 years. It was something that we would pay off, and possibly we would be able to take care of that money for the opportunity to provide the service to municipalities.
Can you, and I know we talked about that, it was a while ago, and so what is the expense that we pay for, like, animal dog control?
So right
Right
now,
now.
what we're paying is we pay $3,500 a year. It doesn't matter if we have an animal in care or not. And then we pay the fee when the animal's in care. So basically, we did 5 dogs this year because of them. And we paid a few $100s for the dogs. You have to have $3,500 on that.
Right.
So just a little bit of information on. Basically, we provide information and there actually is a. Purpose. The trailer configuration, it's basically multiple dogs. You can put it anywhere. But we only need it. We need it, we'll use it, we'll use it. Right now, there's 6 municipalities paying in Gloucester Valley, and my discussion in Gloucester Valley. And even they would be interested possibly discussing this in the future. And there's other municipalities that may also be interested in because they're paying $35. So getting something going would be a good thing, and I think it would be fine if we'd be able to share.
Having factored in our budget, the cost of supervising the animals, and their trailer, that sort of thing.
So what we did is we left the expenses into the budget line. Just because we look at those operating expenses, we anticipate that they're going to be really low, but they're based on how many animals. We could have a year that we don't have enough. We don't know that. But for the last 3 years, there's been 1 dog and then 5 dogs, so it's not anticipated.
So if we purchase the trailer, then we're exiting the agreement with Township. Is that
Correct.
right?
Councilor Robinson, and Councilor Burke.
I was just curious about the wages. It went down.
Wages in,
It went, last year's actual was 52.
so we're talking about the building inspector.
Yes.
So the wages of the building inspector, because we're taking into the service, well, until the end of April, we'll be paying a quarter of the year. And then we anticipate that our costs will be lower than Gloucester Valley service to us. Because our costs will be generated by demand only, as opposed to paying basically half the wage. So if we have lots of building, the demand will be higher. And if, for example, if the cost is $70,000 this year, it meant you did a lot of building, and your revenue on the building side is going to be so much higher. So yes, it should be lower if we stay the same as we are, but if you get an increase on the building side, you're going to be taking the income.
Councilor Burke, again, Councilor Robinson.
Well, we buy the trailer, we won't have to pay the 3,500, or
Correct. Will be out of that agreement.
we can get out of that anytime? That's not, okay.
We have the ability to get out of that already.
Councilor Burke.
So are you anticipating then, so we budgeted for $48,000 for the building inspector? So do you see over time that getting reduced? Because it's kind of like, as they go out, or?
So I would hope that it's increased. Because if the building inspector works, you have more assessment value going into your town. So if if the building inspector was full-time, you would have a really high assessment. So if we continue with where we are, maybe it will go down. But if you hope that your growth is going to be more than 0.7%.
So then the chief building officer's annual wage, you're anticipating is $48,000.
I expect that we will not go over 40. Unless buildings change and you have significant amount.
Yes, I guess.
And the other component which will change is in 2021, because we're going through that training period, we're going to have to partner with a mentor. And that mentor may not be needed the following year. So yes, it may actually go up down considerably, but again, the taxation part goes up.
Yeah, I understand, we hope it goes up, but it's just not, because one of the big main reasons was to having our chief building inspector was to keep costs down, right? And so right now, to me, and I guess you can factor in, but it's only down $2,000.
What do you think about?
Okay, $4,800. Oh. It was 50,000 and now we're budgeting for 20.
You're going down 10%.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
The CEMC wages and benefits, like, last year we had no flood, and his wages were 13,556. But I even thought he got an hour a week, but this is, it seems to be a lot of money for.
The wage of discussed previously was 1 hour a day. And council was expecting that we're falling on a different change. That expense will be there. Only when people are saying.
So you're still looking at $17,000 for the CMC.
There's no way not to have a wage.
January, we reduced that wage.
My opinion right now is no. Because you have to pay someone to do the service. And it should be through a standby plus the administration hourly rate for a certain amount of time. You're probably not going to take that down. And if you do take it down, you're not going to get a qualified person, and you're going to get a training. And there's no other, you don't have any other option.
And then for that practice, that's handbag or something to the.
Yeah, so if we don't anticipate that we need those equipment, you're not going to win that, that will be also something.
You're budgeting 500.
yes, Councilor Robinson.
Now, what are you using to, because you said 275 households?
So that's approximate, and so this number here is based on the actual, building,
Okay, because no, when I looked at the overview for that, it was neither numbers, the numbers I used. Makes sense.
yeah.
So,
The minor adjustments, so there's the.
nice. Okay, fair enough.
The 524 is actual based on their estimate.
Their estimate.
Their estimate for 2020.
Okay.
I'm just wondering because people from the public will read that and if they were like Councilor Robinson and did the math of paper, I'm wondering if you could put in brackets as based on as invoice Y or something, because then when people read it, they're gonna say, oh, okay, I can just like, I know you kind of did it in that sentence, but some other people might be saying, but, you know.
Those costs are based on-
Exactly. As opposed to-
that'd be great.
$1,000,000. What I did not, I wanted is. The budget in 120. Did you take that taken into consideration? You put 2021.
Something like this.
Any idea why the budgeted amount for intersection signs went up so much? And the an actual.
Just on, we did buy a considerable number of signs last year. And they were traffic signs that we utilized in other places. We can break that down, but I think that's where we're going to find.
Okay. And then under wages and benefits, 2/3 of the way down. How come there was such an increase there?
So with public works, if it goes by the amount of snow we have and the call outs the workers have, and also we have a considerable estimate the pay regime and
Okay, and then, and I think I probably have the answer, so on the second page where it's boat launches, where we budgeted for 1,000, we only spent 25, so I imagine, it's just because we weren't using it, or doing anything.
it's the maintenance that we put aside to do both launches. I don't think we paid for that last year when we hadn't paid for it. And we traded the material, so it's something that we would have to have for both launches, and there are some concrete repairs that we have the ability to do.
Okay, and then when we look at the public works garage, so will you be putting out RFPs or tenders as soon as you can, so we can get it up there next year?
So right now, the public works coordinator, communication is back, is going to be working, that we have 120, so that we can actually put together the exact building. And then we will be bringing that design back to council, and then we will look for tenders. And that would be a tender.
Thank you.
Under bridges and culverts, settlements, for last year, it's -514.
I can't explain the minus, Councilor. It may have just been an adjustment from the year before. I don't know what it is, but the real thing is we didn't buy the culverts that we normally buy. So we're going to play a little bit of catch up, and partly is because we didn't do some of the same things. So it should be about $10,000 a year, so we put $15,000 a year, based on what we anticipated that we're going to have to. And with public works, usually you have a little bit of stockpile, and some years you don't use any, and some years you use that.
No, I just want to know why it was done, because we sell something, or?
We didn't sell it because that was one general revenue. We did sell something, but I think it was an adjustment that was made by the treasurer.
Yes, so that would be an actual year.
Just about the intersection signs, I know there's always the reflectivity test that has to be done on intersection signs. And I'm assuming that's going to become part of our asset management plan to track those inspections and the condition of those signs.
So that'll be part of the asset management plan. It's also a good practice to have, the biggest looking at, is to actually for a small municipality, rather than renting or buying the equipment, to just go on a rotation basis that you're not even having to do the test, replacing the signs.
And what is the life expectancy of a sign typically?
It can be 1 year to 1 year, depending on where the sign is.
Thank you. That's a break.
And I'm gonna throw the main contract, last year we spent $100, this year we spent 5,000.
So with the shoulder maintenance, with our public works, we've been discussing ways to improve that shoulder maintenance. And now we have a hobby wheel, which we didn't have in previous years. We also have a gravel reclaimer, and using those two together, there's an advantage to doing that. What we're going to have to do is rent a grader at the same time that we're doing the shoulder reclaiming. Otherwise, we have to take one piece of equipment off to another one on. So that's why it's basically for rental.
Why couldn't we access one of our big tractors and put some kind of blade on it? It's just really-
So this is, the wobbly wheel has to go on the grader. The shoulder reclaimer is a unit that goes offset from the grader. Grader weighs 35,000 pounds. You can handle that weight that far, but some of the smaller tractors that we have can't handle that amount of force on the other side. It's a different thing than having a motor that goes inside. This thing is playing turn now, so it's actually like a rototiller almost, but it's way out there, so. Our equipment is not big enough. Sure, there are big enough tractors to do that, but we don't have.
Okay.
Possibly even possibly do something big enough in a year.
Next, I just do kind of one, we get the this was we have a forward people and you know which is a very powerful for the most part. We recognize 200 and also a different both this is like this is fine. So we take those items into consideration. The budget amount for 2021 would be actually less.
Council Buckland.
With the purchase of new plow truck, does that remove one of the center repair parts, et cetera, from the operating ones?
It will take that. I'm sorry, so.
I still question the purchase of the SUV. You know, $45,000, because when you scroll to the end of the budget information, it says road construction project options, the ones that are options that haven't been budgeted for. You obviously $45,000 going to one of those projects and $45,000 going to an SUV, which we've never had before. And I know what you're going to say, it can be used by administration, it can be used by the chief building inspector, it can be used by the animal control officer, it could be used by the health control officer, but it's still a lot of money to pay out. And I'd rather have it looked at to see in a year, keep track of the time we would have used it versus what we're paying out on mileage and then see if it is a good investment.
I was just wondering if, because I know we had talked about the need for, but could it be financed?
It could be financed, so maybe if I just explain the SUV because of the couple things. So, final person has that is at the end of this month. We also have to share pickup that's used for the CBO. So the SUV coming into our fleet is actually eliminating half a vehicle. The purpose of having a four-way vehicle is that the fire department needs the vehicle because of anticipated distance training having to leave the area and also the fire department to do. By law, presently, we use a truck when we can over 8 months. The CBO presently has a truck, and administration, we do use the vehicles for public works at times. So yes, there will be 4 departments using it. Another component to our plan, in working with the fire chief, is the surplus 3/4 ton that we will have at the end of this process that we buy on pickup now. Which goes to the fire department to be used exclusively for fires that they carry the hoses, so they would go into second life. 45,000, yes, could be, it could be financed. It could be leased. We have the ability within the budget to put 45 on the very purchase.
Councilor Buck.
I can see the rationale for SUV as opposed to. One, from my perspective, if we're sending some of the positions out, they shouldn't be doing. They should be going to Mark's Township vehicle. Simply for the, so they, when the portion is on the yes. The other option with an SUV is if you do have to again, this time of year, you would put it in the back of it. Or you put it in the back of an SUV. For transportation, and if we're getting the trailer as a potential camera, can you do it? I just think as opposed to taking, if it's available, I think there's more than enough justification in having the vehicle use these purposes.
Councilor Everson.
I know in the same reason for liability issues, when we were transporting students, we were going to conferences, we weren't allowed, it was found to come off the user of the vehicle, take much, so we would rent a vehicle. And then that covered both it for the parents and the person's vehicle as long as liability. It's not that I'm saying we shouldn't have one, I'm just not sure if we need one. And I'm afraid that all of a sudden 3 departments are going to need the one SUV at the same time. I would like to see how many times there was a conflict, how many times we had to rent a car, how many times we had to pay out mileage, and then see, just like what Andrew did, let's say with to purchasing that dog pen, or changing from a shared CDO to having our own, if it is worth paying for it. I'm not saying we couldn't, I'm just saying it's just something to me that we discussed a number of months ago. But is it something that we really need? It's a want. Wants and needs are different. I'd rather see that money go to road, putting reserves to a road that's going to probably, not. But if we have the information based on that, then next year you could say, you're right, you know what, we spent $50,000 for finance, so we do it better, and maybe it is a better option.
Councilor Buck.
I know what you're saying, you want some data to support, but how do we get the data? We don't have to use in the first place. Again, from the mobile control perspective, they may not be able to get a vehicle. Right? Yes, your CBO has a possibility in daytime stuff. But for your CBO, your fire prevention, a lot of times that's unless we're going to rent it and keep it here.
No, I wouldn't rent it permanently. I just rent it for the times when you were going all the way. Yes. And like we have to go back to the fact that what Mr. Smith said, in the last couple of years, we had 1 dog and 4 puppies. So I mean, sometimes when there's a crisis or an emergency situation, we're creative and we figure out a way to get the job done. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not necessarily saying those will be all the time, just as needed.
Councilor Robbins.
Just from a practical point of view, I know myself when I try to rent vehicles right now, you're not finding them. So the issue is, yes, we might say use that strategy, but when you need it, it may not be there because I called Pembroke, I called Redford, I called Empire, and I could not get a vehicle when I needed.
And maybe I could just add here, because I had a conversation with staff. The paramedics usually every year sell off some of their SUVs. They're not old as far as the year goes, but they have high mileage. And to follow up your point, maybe if we could get one of those for a year or 2, then we could certainly determine what usage it would require and how much it would be used. Will give us that just about.
And I agree, though, it would also be able to get one of their SUVs out of the valleys. The problem is there anything available and would be expensive bigger? The other option that we can look at is maybe a 2-year lease on something. as opposed to making the purchase, I don't know how much money we would save as opposed to purchasing. I suspect that purchasing is gonna be the most cost effective. I believe there is a reason for it, and I believe there is a need for it. So $45,000 now is gonna last us how many years? As opposed to throwing money away, at least we've got nothing. I just think, and I see the operational side too, because in the world, I can see that truck getting used. Between the building official and fire using like their balls, so steam is going to be a lot better than the existing pickup coming off the road. It's going to be a lot better than the surplus road vehicle that's coming off. It's going to be that's it. I don't think it's a lot. I think it's
when I look at if we're able to do the financing, it would almost be $100,000 if we did the pickup truck and the SUV. That would give us a significant amount to reallocate.
I just think there's one pot of money over there, and I'd rather have money saved going into reserves, so when our roads fail, we have money. And when I look at the bottom line for the volunteer fire department, it's like $678,000, and even if we put, like, let's say 14,000 of that on there, and you're getting up to, it's getting close to $700,000. And that's a lot of money spent. It's not saying I don't see the value in it, I just don't see the value in it maybe this year, and I'd rather take those monies saved and put them towards some of the roads that we've identified as being roads that should be maybe looked at, but we don't have the monies to look at, And I like the idea of, roads, looking at purchasing a surplus piece of equipment from a government, right? And maybe then we can keep the data, like Councilor Buckle said, and we can see how many times there was a conflict of interest because, 3 departments wanted it on the same day. Because I always think it's still wear and tear on the vehicle, you still put gas on it, you still put insurance, you still put licensing. So there's lots of other additional costs that go along with purchasing.
The staffing matters, on the vehicle, the lease, whether the cost of lease it per year. Like 2 or 3 years, and then every 2 or 3 years, you have a new vehicle. Instead of paying 45 and in 10 years, you swore out.
Is there enough time to come back with some of that information? I would say check the availability if the paramedics have anything, police, and even financing.
So just because I've got that experience many times, I should have turned lease of 1 year lease, never rate in 4 year lease. The lease vehicles have a problem that if you do any scratch bigger than the credit card, you pay a premium for that. And you pay what they typically how you want to. I would discourage a lease for that reason. Unless it's a 4 year lease to buy out, then you can buy out again. But we could come back to the information on a 1 year lease. We can look at possibly county or other government sites. We have looked at some of those sites. Unfortunately, can't buy our CMP vehicles at all now. And other police forces are selling vehicles. I've SUVs, and you've taken the backseat out to fill the backseat with equipment, and you don't get to see them buy the vehicle. But we can look at often another world that possibly would work for council is if you want to buy a used vehicle to check the waters, which may be better than a lease, then change the 45 and 25 and buy a new vehicle. And that gives you the freedom to look at the county line, to give them for 10, you give them for 10.
Yeah, and that's not a bad idea because at least you have something there.
I can see where leasing is the same kind of thing. I understand what Council is saying, that a new vehicle is 2 years from lease. The problem is they're also paying every year. if you either finance this over 4 or 5 years, lots of paper, you're gonna get it. So I don't think leasing long term is the way to go. I should have mentioned leasing short term on the track. We can very easily see if it works. If it works, well, that means we're gonna do, that means we're gonna do, or running it to grant. But for $45,000 for a vehicle, if we take that out of the budget today, in the thought of putting it towards road reserves for a year until we even have some other way to get data. A year from now, we'll have the same discussion that we need to do. Sometimes, you know, that's just good either for that amount or lesser than for you.
Well, I do like the idea, I guess it's a good compromise, because when I look at road construction projects often, Lefty Road, single plowing surface was $43,000, which is the cost of the SUV. But that being said, I mean, maybe I would rather, and then you look at like, we're replacing vehicles that are 28, or the rolling stock, and when we want to replace vehicles, we don't want to keep them longer. Because then we decrease in value or when we sell them off. So I mean, I don't think we'd ever run the SUV in the ground. I don't think the township council would probably go for that idea. So maybe the compromise is to reduce the 45 to 25, and then maybe something comes up even underneath, and then we can look. Because if it is really, really needed, maybe we sell that SUV the next year and we buy a new one. That's what we do. But at least then we could chart the data, we could find out how much it actually costs, because we should know what is the gas involved, what's the insurance involved, what's the licensing involved. How many times did it actually get used for, let's say, the volunteer fire partner to go on some kind of training services? How many times did the CMC use it for emergency purposes? You know, how many times did the chief go? How many times did we actually need it for animal control? Okay, I know it's a little bit of paperwork involved, but everybody that uses it could fill out a log sheet, and then somebody at the end or quarterly or halfway through just compiles the information. And then we.
So am I hearing an agreement to change that to 25?
And you think 25 is gonna work for the 30? Just having gone through the purchasing of the vehicle, I'm not sure that 25 is.
So 25 is going to give you a 6-year-old. That's a good vehicle. And 32 is going to give you a vehicle that's pretty. Unfortunately, one thing that you do lose, the purchase and use, is use discount. You can change the price of it. And each year, when the full discount is set, for example, we'll pick up truck around $700. We have the price that you pay is not the same. But you don't get that price to tender.
Comes around.
I'm still for financing.
And financing the work with fine. Basically, you pay for first.
Because we're going to spend another hour, 2 years from now, discussing the same thing.
Okay with financing.
Because that, what that's doing is elevating a large land to use somewhere else.
Don't we want the vehicles in 2 years?
You can sell it.
Once a burn?
But this was in the budget and the budget comes through this. We should be able to purchase them vehicles for the town, almost a 2%. I haven't seen them in 5 years.
So what we get is different than what's going to get in the other financing, but it would be a very old percentage here.
Probably less than one.
And I can't speak to the other time.
It's when the deal gets struck.
Yes, and that changes very frequently. I found out a lot.
Yep.
The 2004 Ford truck that we have, do we still have it, or is that so?
It's just sitting there and we used it in the summer.
We would have 2 fire trucks and for sale, not to get new.
You could potentially sell them. I think you're doing new trucks.
Once about,
So if we've got a general consensus on doing this by payments, what will we reduce those budgeted amounts to this year?
So, as Councillor, Roberts, around 100,000, we'll make that adjustment, bring that back for your consideration.
Okay.
One item, is the auto and home recovery. Our contribution to the state will be 109,000. So if you look at the final figures, so if you take into consideration our budget for 2021 has to be.
Why are the Burnt Road wages and the Shawwood wages the same? Is Burnt Road not open lot more than Shawwood's is?
That is correct. We make sure that we look at that adjustment, see how.
I think
yes.
Question for,
Oh.
That, round about the rate that we're paying, 42,000. That should be over next year.
So
I think that's what I thought, yeah, 2022, so yeah, next year, at the venture, is paying off, yeah.
Sorry if I may. So the line was council had asked for more this year. Yeah, consideration, but that's not why it's higher. So council wants to look at it now, or we should bring it back, or I think that's all we need.
okay. And then this is just a resident had come to me and said this. So because of COVID last year and we didn't have any large, what do we call it? Right, and so what you did was on the bottom of the, one of the information inserts you put on the taxes, we had a coupon. Right? So I'm just wondering how much that cost us, because this resident said he liked that because then he wasn't tied into going to the large dump day at a certain time and he could go whenever. And when I start thinking about like cottages and even other people maybe cleaning out a house, I mean, that coupon to me provided much more flexibility for our residents. I'm not sure how many were used and how much it costs. And when you look at that to what we did before, if it was tremendously more or not, and just saying, that might be a nice thing to do for our residents so they feel, even though they're paying taxes, they do have a coupon, but they could take to the ongoing waste recovery at any time for a large bulk item, whatever they have.
I actually like that because let's say use the other flexibility going on too, just on one day. And it also means that we don't have to put extra expense, the additional pins and additional staff and additional hauling. Again, if there's not a huge difference in cost, maybe that's the way to go again, depending on how many people can guarantee.
Actually, and I think from, meetings with OPWRC, they liked it. Because it didn't create that mass collection of items. I think we did it over a 2-week period. And you're right, it spread out the drop-offs over that time.
And the one resident said what he liked was the fact that, I forget, if one, you could take plastic chairs, but at our bulk day, you couldn't take plastic chairs or something. But when he was able to go to the landfill site, of course, they took the plastic. There was something.
So there was not a significant cost increase. It certainly added to the convenience. The only thing with those type of things is you have to understand what it's again. because you do about 3,000. And yes, you make 100 this year, but you make 500 next year. But the efficiency, certainly the residents like it, someone like driving far, they have convenience. It is less overhead for the municipality, to set things up, and we do not pay haulage charges. Literally, so I would say the council likes it, is worth it. You have to understand kind of how much they use it. But it would be awesome to do.
If this was an oddball, you would.
Right, maybe we try and we track it, and then we would know when you come around next year if it was, you know, if it was a good idea or not. But at any rate, I just thought it was a good idea, and that person said, you know, we quite enjoyed doing that, and to me, it looks like we're doing something for the community, we're giving them a free coupon, and maybe he said, I don't even care if it costs me like $2, at least I feel like I was getting some point. Okay.
Council Burton and
Andrew, you said you're looking at more hours for the shop routes here,
Yes.
but before you got here, we did a study change, do you remember that? On the council there, we did a survey with the transfer sites and everybody was back in this.
This was just something that was brought to us. Consulting council.
No, I just remember there was a study done on that. Years ago.
I believe you're right, yes.
And everybody at that time was happy with the hours that we had.
I'm just wondering in the summertime, if some of the seasonal residents would appreciate maybe having like a Wednesday or something like that, where they could bring it, you know, as opposed to maybe they're leaving on a Saturday and they wouldn't have access to it, or maybe people feel they've got too much stinky garbage in the summertime as opposed to.
But Bird Road is open Monday and Wednesday.
Oh, I know, but what I'm saying
For
is
hearing
that the people here may not travel all the way up to, I mean, we're on the race because it's open every day. And maybe that's why we were looking at different hours, we just for the seasonal.
Probably
residents.
Monday was,
But anyway, maybe that's-
leaving the college.
I also heard a lot of people say to me, especially with the lineup sometimes here, and then they started going to Ottawa Valley Race and they kept going there because they liked the convenience, they liked it, how much quicker it was. And a lot of them commented on how offended the staff is there.
The staff is super friendly, and when you talk to them, they're like, oh, it's nice, I love my job here, I love working here, it's like, I mean, they are truly enthusiastic about it. There. That's what you want, right? It's my job to work, you never to work for you. Yeah. That's very interesting.
So did staff just want to bring back what it would be without additional hours?
So the budget item, they would be around $18.
And are we gonna look at a coupon?
So just maybe a separate discussion. Staff would like to continue with the coupon because it works. The other thing that was very successful for the last year COVID was our money system, our cash management system. We've had no complaints from them about cash management system. We're very efficient at counting cash. We know what goes into that container comes to this office. So we plan to continue that this year. I think we did very well at during COVID times and stayed with.
But there was a short time that we lost one because we weren't charging.
There was a time when we weren't, but
I know, it's
no, the revenue is great.
First off, is that the number of organizations. Community center, 2,000 veterans, 5,000 for the Eagle seniors, 20,000 for the Eagle arena, 80,000 for the library, and 1,000 for the museum. So now, 100 of these organizations, the speaker that is in place presently is they do help to submit these.
in, because it's a huge community. And like, after last year, submitted a request that rather than using the process, it's just being included in the budget. The council included.
So, like, what if the library at one point asked for more money and even the arena asked for more money? And
Yeah, so those items, especially the library and the senior center and the arena, they would be a budget discussion. Library asked for $90,000, and that would be a discussion. So you can put it in based on the numbers that you have, but any change would have to be discussion with council.
Yeah, that's the record showing.
okay, so, couple slides back, we talked about a $500 scholarship bursary. That's in addition to the swim one? Swim scholarship?
That was, council had two different ones.
Right, I was just double checking. And we go to the second page. I don't think we have to put in 15,000 for doctor recruitment anymore because the committee is no longer asking for money. We're just a committee to go through and dissolve the committee.
True, but that difference from the carryover from 2020 can make our.
Okay, is that because you didn't ask for it or what happened?
Yes, so there was there was there normally, and the invoice for our contribution, they didn't catch it until, and by that time they were able to release the invoice.
So they're gonna provide us an increase.
They have done it already, so the 15,000 from last year was needed, 2020, and they're going to split it in 2021.
Thank you. I thought it said just $15,000.
So the budget for recreation for 2020.
So, I guess what you're saying then, because I think last year we did go through the application process.
Yeah.
For the seniors and
Yeah.
the museum. Are you then going to say that basically you're standing?
That's what the staff is proposing, rather than go to the application process. They, just consider it during the budget.
Just maybe the call. So the Eatonville seniors and the museum did submit their application this year.
Yes.
So we do have the application. This is just what we're saying is that council has always done this as a historical thing. Is they're actually, unlike some organizations, they're actually a line item on the budget. That if council is okay with supporting those entities as council, then maybe they shouldn't come back as an application.
So then what would have to happen, we would have to adopt them as the standard.
Well, you already have somewhere that became a GL item on your right, they exist, unlike fish, the fish flower, they're not there, they come on. So these are standards that you can link to the GL number, you're moving about use.
And just one other thing, so you budgeted $7,000 for ball on the netting. Is that including the poles? Remember we talked a long time about the poles?
There are some poles that need to be picked up. It's not buying the poles that we already own.
Okay, so hopefully this year, then we have the new poles put up along.
Everything would be in place.
And did you budget for, remember for the swim dock, we were gonna put some kind of netting on it to keep the seagulls?
So the netting was something that we could accommodate in the amount of items here.
Thanks.
The trailer, hub network, is that granted because of the new?
That's the local sale and then we can fall. boat launch.
Is there a breakdown for that?
That was an application from the council. I'm not around.
How much is it? Of that 120 is township committee?
1,000. And that's only on acceptance of the grant. We get the grant, we don't get the grant. We don't get the-
What's the representative?
Sometimes, and you know, maybe this is just petty, but the trailer is natural, every, hub, and I was seeing the trailer hub, you know, when we were doing stuff. And then I was trying to figure it, the trailer hub network, and then I thought, I bet that's what it is. But I'm just learning graphics for people in the public that aren't sure what it is, and even if we just put trail network and graphics, we said, like, Melissa Bishop Park, Wilkins Trail, and.
Deacon.
Just-
The council will be okay with taking over how about we can talk to the using group.
Sure. Because when I saw hub and the trailer, then I would go on the trailer hub. And I think that would be easy to explain to public. I think
120,000, we in this trip.
it would be. But it would be awesome if we got that, because those two areas would be just.
So, hopefully, we're putting 2,250,400, for the road. projects. 500,000, is allocated for reserve. And then there's 400,000, allocated for, road, project. For example.
So that would mean if we thought, a road should be done, then we'd use those monies to do faster. Was that right? And that's why,
Yeah,
the next road is possible road projects for council to review. So the Lex Cemetery Road, there was monies that we got from the grants, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like,
It's like 943,000. We have. One thing on the road projects, this is what council is deciding, basically your road project. Council, in our, we had a discussion about. We put 450 and a contingency of 50. That way, council can pick the roads for 450. If projects come in higher than expected, you have 50,000 more contingency. If projects come in on budget, then you have $50,000 to choose another one for the year. But as council knows, last year, projects came in higher. This just gives you the ability to get what you want and have contingency. And the things work out like on.
so do we feel that our amounts are probably better this year, like, than they were last year, where last year we thought we had good amounts, but then they came in with it's much higher, do we feel like it's better this year?
I can tell you in 2 days.
Okay.
So in 2 days, let cemetery closes. So we're going to know where things are. But that's gonna give us a little bit of a thermometer to tell us the numbers of the roads this year.
Nice.
Like Flash Point Road, where is that? Oh, okay.
I think it's a pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy weight.
But that's a road that I haven't seen before, there's really, that road just really deteriorated.
I'll let Terry speak on that.
That road is in bad shape, and action, maintenance, what is on. And those last couple of springs, really broke up. And the road needs to be done. I've seen now, so.
Did it deteriorate, because last year it wasn't even on our radar.
No, it's been quite a few years, since that road's been done. We believe it's probably been, maybe 10, 15 years since it's seen our surface. Beautiful on the top. We did some road work on it there about 4 years ago. Changed some culverts, we did some padding, but full surface of the road is actually, it receives a lot of heavy truck traffic and it's not half loaded. So it's open all the way around the full road.
And how long would you say that was? Long?
We did going to asphalt and just more gravel and stuff like that.
I want to very things more. So when you have a road like that, it takes county deep, and it's an area of saturation. Once it starts to go, it does go very good. Stuff happens to the road. As far as what we will do to the road, Jerry has a plan for the road, so you will be basically grinding it up to build. And then we'll be putting a certain song, we need to put it up. Gate and
Well, guess I have a question for Barry. If you have to pick the top 4 off this list, in Royal Pines, we already agreed that we want to do that. Which would be your top priorities?
No, proof of rapids road. That is very bad shape. And seen in years. Like the whole shape of the road is on, and there's a lot of farms. A lot of distortion where it used to come into a point of we come over the hill from Mike Lex, campsite. We had did some patching, filled in holes in the road there. That road is patchy.
And I'm thinking more like your beeline, your Green Lake Road, the padding and repairs, North Road, Monkey Road.
Yeah, like down there,
I mean, wait another year, or how many have to be done there?
well, Beeline Road right now is not in bad shape, but it is deteriorating around in the corners. And then 2 summers ago, we did some shoulder stuff for gravel. What should be done on them corners, they should be asphalt. Shoulder should be asphalt put in when you come off of Highway 41. And notice on the right side, we have put it in ourselves, with this tractors. The turn is too sharp for big trucks. When they're coming around there, their trailer is running on the shoulder. And then another place, when you come in before you hit the station, the road is narrow there as well, and you can't keep the shoulders. We wash them out, they beat it with the trailers, and it creates a hole. The side of the road is actually deteriorated. It's not a bad road if you wait too much longer on it. You can have to do it all.
If I can suggest, council, we talked about, that's a very good road to do with 300,000. You talked about Black Point. It is, very heavy traffic road, and when it completely fails, it will be disastrous for that business. So I suggest council very strongly at those. The other one, which are in this budget, we don't have quite enough to do it, do some, will be a part of the project, especially around that. It failed to the point that it needs work. That would be your 450.
And the other one, it's not on here, and I know it's in bad shape. I don't know about the rest, but I certainly get fixed on it every time, and that's Mid Lake Road. We did about 1 kilometer.
Would council be interested in doing? and, Black Point Road. And another attempted it. Or you can put more into reserve or more contributions to do it.
Councillor Robinson.
For all, the 65,000 doing the padding for Beeline, is that all of it, all the areas?
Yeah, that would be all the areas and then put a single surface street.
Okay, thank you.
That's maybe just under 500, you could do. Black Point. Line, and even that's on your contingency, but.
What about 100,000 that we took from the trucks? Would that go into reserve?
$100,000. You could put that in there right now. Another.
And what they're saying, like, how much would it be to do, fix that section of Burn Road?
I'm thinking you're gonna be in the 35-40 range.
And then could we do another, even 2 kilometers on New Lake Road?
So first, let's look at money. So now you're about, you're talking $600,000.
Yeah.
So you've done 300,000 on Black Creek. So we already been 118 Black Point. You've been 35. I'm hoping to sell that. 35 on let's do 40 on Hunt, and 65 on Beeline. We have.
Well, what's the lines, what's the difference between that and then what we're slated to do?
When Perry wrote this, it wasn't on that list, so it's already taken care of, so you can just throw that off.
Thanks.
We have 85,000 left to play with.
Royal Pines is not on working?
Royal Pines is all the other budget now. On the first part of the budget. So there's 85,000 for your shopping list left. And that includes all your contingency, so. Maybe you might want to do further in Burke Road.
So we're gonna do Beeline for sure. Right?
Beeline, Perfect Rapid, Black Point. And part of Burke Road, depending on all your money. to Burke
We're
Road.
doing a beeline too?
And we're not doing Link Lake,
And you want Link Lake in there too?
I'm just asking.
So Link Lake 1 kilometer last year was 55 years.
Somewhere in the area.
So $60,000 for this year. You want to put 60,000 in the next year.
How much would you be doing on Burke Road then, just that hill part?
Yeah.
35,000?
Section of the approach to the hill on the top, you have to get over.
So you saw around 35,000.
You said 40, I think you said we're gonna do that, so we're gonna do that.
Well, I have to,
We'll do the 40.
Karen, Link Lake, the 1 kilometer that we did is the next kilometer after that is just a path. Or is it?
There's areas of it, there's parts of it that you could probably get away with speeding on. So. The first part we done was the worst.
Right.
Yeah. As you get farther out on the road, for it's having 60, it's better pace on the road. It wasn't the first, but you know, the first there is like the lay of the land, it's a lower ground.
No, essentially, it's not all.
There's a question on these roads. So we're doing it based on their current condition, not on our asset management, correct?
This is basically capital plan money to spend. You're gonna discuss your reserves for your asset management after this. So this is what council said, spend $500,000. Now, some of these roads, for example, Perfect Rapid is in that asset management. The road is identified. But not all of them are in the list on that one.
Do we know what's on the list for next year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the 3 Harper. Yeah,
And we just want to.
Why don't you put it into the circle of 40?
So. 40, late. And Elon was 65.
So they wanted 64.
Almost for me, but,
The 300,000.
okay, got it. Because here's what I'm looking at. As it stands right now. We're looking at spending $2.25 million this year. A little bit more than that, because you guys are 78,000 in roads, construction. And the road construction plan for next year is only 500 million. I'm wondering, would it be better to do some of this next year for the ones that can hold off? I'm not usually a big fan of that, but just looking at the numbers.
But to me, it doesn't mean that we can't move some of the 2023 goals up to 2022. The whole idea is trying to get on top of the rules, right? I think that's what we're doing.
My thing was trying to, if you can get rid of some of the small ones to make the life. It would make sense.
I agree with the documents. Elevators, right.
Exactly where it should go.
Be line, yeah, that's a good choice. Because again, that's not my traffic road, with any trucks. Black Creek, or Black Point. Another road, we want to stay with the border road, and again, it's a major employer that is.
Bird Road gets a lot of traffic and starting to. Bird Road.
and the back end of the road,
Yeah, I know, that's,
like, it's not that big of a stretch there on the usual road, but after you go down the hill on that top, they're probably before the bridge there.
Yeah.
I think about probably last longer. So that comes into the over that bridge, yeah, they're trying to.
Up at the end of the loser, and
You know, the other end, like back and.
oh, last week, oh,
Yeah, right, which,
past the bridge here.
yeah, and it's between the bridge and the hill.
There's, we did some texting on there. Better than it was. But there's no drainage there. That's not better. Yeah.
that's not one of the higher traffic.
I would like to say that we, like, there are a lot of high-end houses on there that are paying big taxes, you know, add all those up, it's probably similar to what Oakland is thinking, right? And the fact is, it is in a lot of shape.
Yeah.
And lots of people use that as a way to get around Eganville to come out of downtown, so it does get used. So I do see the value, like, here goes, doing something on, like, for sure.
The 578 and that goes.
Yeah.
So 300 for 100 days. 113,000 watching. 40,000 for Bird Road. 5,000 for Eagle Road. And 60,000 for.
It's a quick area, what's the complicate, keep the lines on the roads, where's that called?
We do have a holiday. 15 years, it changed now.
It's in there, but is there a desire to do more line painting?
Yeah, and it's, I know I live on the road, but there's roads come up around the corners and over the hills. Like in the last 6 months, I almost recycled that 3 times. I know people don't know where the edge of the road is, there, one guy took the ditch here one Saturday morning. And they just hogged that road in the last.
So are you asking for a center line or are you asking?
The center line, only. Like any place you have these hills and these curves and the road.
So what we will do when we come back with some of the adjustments that we made
Mhm.
today, we'll make a slight adjustment for increased line maintenance.
Just the center line on the road, I think would make the people, coming over the hill, like somebody when they hit on the hills. And there's a little red car guy through the, like, he scares me actually. Oh, you're gonna take somebody else. He's liable to them.
The council, okay with what you've got now at 575, will give you a little bit of a dimension.
Think so. It's even, yeah, it's not even so.
So we will make all the adjustments on the budget as it stands. Right now, as you've gone through it, your next component will be to talk about the buckets.
Right.
So maybe you might want to have a little break and then talk about buckets.
I think that's,
That'll be a lot of fun.
I think that's a good idea. If we can take, is everybody okay with 10 minutes? And we will come, 12 minutes. We'll come back at 22. Okay. Welcome back. I'd like to start by thanking council for the wholesome discussions that we've had on our budget, and we arrived at the final draft of our budget. And so Laura has prepared a resolution. I'm going to ask her to read it because it's different than the one I have, because there's been some changes. So. Laura? Oh, and there it is there. The council accepts the budget presentation and directs staff to make the changes as noted. And I got a mover and a second, moved by Councilor Robinson, seconded by Councilor Burns. Any other discussion at this point? Seeing now, I'll call the vote. Councilor Buckball.
Yes.
Councilor Burns.
Yes.
Councilor Robertson.
Yes.
Councilor Ricky Schultz.
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. So the next item then is the, are we doing the 3-year operating plan or are we going to do reserves?
So for your operating plan is there, for the meeting, so
Okay,
you've already seen that, we just put it included in our mind.
okay. That brings us to item 12, which is the reserves contribution discussion. Everybody has in front of them the list of reserves, the report.
So this, to be very clear, what you have before you have two documents, one is the report that Daniel did last fall. And the second sheet is the printout that Michelle did based on this is a fact in reserve. So they should be pretty close to matching. Michelle's going to explain a few things. I just want to put one to bed right now. The safe water one has come up several times. There's no purpose. So that 50,000 you will want to do. Great, but then something else that you're doing. And also the reserve for the 3/4 ton PA will be depleted because you're taking longer. The T8 ton $12,000 is on page 3. If you're going to finance it, probably not going to be using that reserve.
Mr. Mayor, if I can ask before we proceed. Just to be clear, this does not include the withdrawal from reserve that we've just discussed. Is it what, correct? This is prior to that? So our actual demand.
This is the bucket in the center of the table.
So that's the buckets now before the new budget is. Yeah. Okay.
And so those two, and then one of the 2007, the Sterlings would be depleted. And up more would be needed for them. So I'm gonna start with everything. So but just one last thing, that's probably a too important thing. Unless you put money into these reserves, they say they don't. You've got to choose what you're gonna contribute.
They drop on you know.
Yeah.
Well, overall, 500,000, because you pulled 950,000 out of the reserve, and you put. 500,000 into the- I'm gonna pull up the second document. And talk about, well, was correct, so this shows the reserves as of December 31st, 2020. And this is audited reserves for 2020. So, so the opening balance, which would reflect the amount in Daniel's report, overall was, was $3,580,104. In 2020, we made a number of additions. We didn't utilize all the safety start we received from the government in 2020. So approximately 38,000 was at the end of the year was put into reserves. There's also some working capital. So this is our surplus from 2020. So 83,524 was surplus at the end of the year. This was put into working capital. So, and then this is the 15,000 for the doctor recruitment and we all do. So in 2020, 313,500 was added to the reserves. And there was we did withdraw some funds from reserves in 2020. So $104,729 was utilized from the modernization funding. So currently we have $374,210. We also withdrew $157,512 for $157,500 working capital. And from the general working capital fund, we also withdrew 93,500 from the working finance environment. So we withdrew 355,741. So the end of the year, we had a balance of $3,682,181 in reserves. And as to capital well, we in the 2020 budget, we have this drawn 950,000 approximately. But we have so as Andrew mentioned, subsequently, we have the reserve for 2021. So this is so and just for council information. So as the taxation rate is
calculated for the 2021 budget. Okay, so presently, we have a approximately 1% increase in our taxation levy. Okay, so on a $100,000 worth of assessment, this means an increase of $4.41. If we want to increase the taxation levy by 1%, this translates into additional $6.55 for each 100,000 worth of assessment. Okay, an average value home, single family home in your Wilberforce is valued at $203,035. But an average home is not. So if we were to calculate a 1% taxation levy increase for a $200,000 home, that would translate into an additional $13.10 for the township share in this whole. 2% would be $26.10. 3% would be $39.03. And $52.40 additional tax levy for the residential portion, and 5% would be an additional $65.50 on the residential tax. And for council's information, what this translates for new revenue. So 1% increase is an increase of $31,000. 2%, $62,000. 3% is an additional $93,000 in additional revenue. 4% is $124,000. 5% increase translates into $155,000 in additional revenue.
And just for clarification, Michelle, the 1% what you talked about, that's new growth, right? Or just under 1% is new growth.
So, new growth in approximately 0.7%. So that's what factored into the taxation levy currently.
Right.
So an additional 1% would be the $13.10 on $200,000.
So right now, the budget that you presented us doesn't have any increase, so a taxpayer wouldn't be paying an increase in their property.
The 1% should be absorbed by the new growth, yes.
Okay, I was just double checking.
So that's the good news part, was the status quo was 1% budget that we've just gone through. The challenge, as they said right from the beginning, is if we don't put anything in reserves, we just carry that deficit forward for the next council or the next number of years.
Can we go through our reserve fund titles and see which ones we can X out? I'm thinking about the 1% and 2%.
Yes, that's right.
At the beginning was highlighted like the state water we can get out, the TK, the Chevy as well, and there was something else that was identified.
I'm pretty sure we can get rid of the doctor recruitment thing too, once that's 16,000, if whatever comes out of it.
Okay. Are those dollars, where would they be reallocated to?
That is will council.
Okay. I guess, and I guess to, was, are there any others that we can X out and make a decision on?
Maybe we could start at the beginning with the election.
So election currently there's $4,500. So that's to offset the cost of running the election.
Is that for like, that's not for ballots and all that other stuff, that's just for pen and paper and wages that they offer.
For the total, so it would be ballot, or mail-in ballot, the workers.
The cost of the election was $20,000. No more.
I'm going to say that Shell's going to come back to that, that was very low. Not wrong. It was a death, just to be clear, back now.
So I did think it was more in there.
I thought we were putting 4,500 in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that makes sense because it was $20,000 in 4 years ago.
And how was money, is having, money?
So the closing balance is at the end of 2020.
And these are numbers here.
Now the report you're looking at was prepared prior to that, so they don't have the updated 2020 numbers. So in the modernization reserve, currently there's $374,210. In our 2021 budget, we are utilizing the fund. State restart, so that was for COVID expenses.
Where's that? Where's that?
Modernization.
Is there no? Oh, okay, I'm looking at this and you're looking at that.
Yes. Okay. That's why I'm saying that report was,
Yeah, gotcha, okay, I understand.
this is current, so that's why I'm going through this.
Okay.
Okay. State restart, is currently $37,794. In that reserve. Working capital, so that's a parking lot reserve plus the deficits at the end of the year. It currently sits at $1,168,852. Okay. Then we have an reserve. So for building maintenance, there's $10,000. And the intention of that was pay for any major repair. Then we have a reserve of $40,000 for municipal costs. That was the same, throughout the impact of a major repair on this building, such as replacing.
That's that $160,000 there for new fire hall. After the work done on fire hall is over, our fire hall is in pretty good shape now, you would say. And I didn't think use that money as money for.
And that was probably the money for the way a long time ago, right, when they were thinking about making their own.
They haven't changed since 2013.
Yeah, so it's been our same since 2013, was created to fund a new fire hall originally.
So the council like that to be taken aside for now and reallocated.
Sure. Or maybe leave a little bit in for fire and repairs, so.
I would suggest we do something.
Like, your department, you know, more likely to moving some of those two back.
Sure. Well, maybe take 100 out of there and move the 60 into the 230 or 30.
I would agree with that.
Michelle, if I can just do the 1279, which is the next line. That is not there now. And the council remembers that was an amount that the support group, council, the township was willing to support, who gave that for the person who might saw a piece of equipment. Basically, the money we give them and then came back to us.
The working fire fund, 244,000.
So presently it's 151,032. So that's also been a parking spot for any surplus or deficit for the fire department. Yes.
That's where the truck money is spent.
The truck money,
For preventative equipment.
okay, right. Was there any technology for new trucks
So
that you're purchasing?
Not gonna be.
not to the,
So 93,500 was withdrawn in 2020, just for all their renovations.
that's for the park station renovations and the buffer area identification equipment.
Why do we think then the Rankin and Golden Lake needs $45,000 in separate accounts? Does that not seem a little high too?
So this was, we've made up the building funds, they repaired the buildings within use and things like this all the time. And we find that's the reason.
So then the working funds are predominantly for.
For the equipment, purchase of and for last year with park equipment,
And that's shared between the two,
for one fire. Department. There's only one end.
right?
So basically, the Rankin Fire Department, the Golden Lake buildings. In addition.
I'm wondering under the name if we should indicate that somewhere.
So we can do Rankin Fire building.
Yeah.
Facilities.
Yeah.
Station wide.
Station.
Just think so other groups can, know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The only comment I made on the funds are offered in Beacon Station. Kind of shape. It's in potentially for the roof. I don't both likely looking at the roof at one point and like that.
So we'll be creating a reserve.
So the Beacon is all considered part of the administrative lead, but again, I just caution that it's.
Well, if you stay where you are now, we can make a note that Golden Lake Station includes Beacon. And then there'd be a place to get that money.
The 20,000 for policing and landfill, they haven't been changed in 8 years.
That's correct. Never changed since 2013.
So we would suggest that these things is something that you're not going to use it for reserve agreement, but something that you buy and lease.
Yeah.
So you can allocate. Those things to those things.
Do we have to do something, remember, in Council Buckle, maybe you could help us there, you know, when we're looking at like creating something like with mental health and social workers and having like a working committee and stuff like that.
Community safety and well-being plan.
So where do those monies come from operating that? Like, if you had to go. If you had to go far away to learn something, or if you had workshops to do and stuff, where do those monies, would they come from?
So,
That would be a council administrative expense.
Okay, so.
so for council members or? for
Yeah,
staff members?
that's right, for council members.
Okay, so that would be.
Because you'd have to get one.
Okay, because then I was wondering if that would have been used for policing, if the money's taking out of that $20,000 to allow you to go on offices and stuff. But you're saying there's another pool of money for that somewhere, so I agree then. Policing activity.
The 85,000 for landfill. That's not related to water waste recovery center.
That's. That is actually, I believe, the landfills and the township. You have sites that need remediation or something.
Yeah, that's for the, in case you don't happen to close your plans. that if down the road anything had to be done there, there was one that's not.
That's what we're going to require, yes.
Could we put in maybe brackets there, Sean Woods or, so then it's just for future council, they know that's specifically for the ones that are in our township and not necessarily.
You could put closed landfill, that better describes it.
And should we keep the? Okay, it seems like a weird number.
I imagine it's complicated numbers.
Is it considered like a contingency?
No, there has to be money in place for professional care. And for forever and ever.
So then what I would say is for perpetual care. So that for down the road.
Make it clear.
And this problem was in Virgo, it's like, it's not something common, which is not common, I think we just. Nothing going there before. It's just to take care of bin repairs or replacements at the time. To replace the bin, you're in $12,000 now, so it's not an enormous, it's going in the management.
Do you think we should get rid of Sean Woods?
I think we could leave the, if we're gonna keep the site, we need to be able to have something in place.
So should we be building it up?
You actually need to get up to 15.
Okay,
So is that something where we take money out of the state and fire and then stick the money into the?
or take the policing and split it between the two.
Because you're gonna end up with a pool of money and you're gonna strictly, yes, you could put it in that.
So if we took the 20,000 policing and moved it down,
It's an easy move. And a big be gone.
take the policing and move it down to, the land, the.
Maybe 17,000 for both of them.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
If I could just make a suggestion, because we're dealing with money that's over there, and we're not actually taking anything away. Maybe it might be best if we got our opinion from staff as to what the balance it should be. And then determine and then have a better idea. Because again, if we're talking about eliminating the policing line, that's $20,000 going into the main. pocket. So I think if we figure out, first of all, what we're taking out, and then we see what we have in the pocket, and then assign it, because we're just gonna start jumping stuff around and pick the few.
Some of the ones on here are on a piece of postage.
And we said we get rid of the 50,000 for safe water.
Hopefully it's someplace up here.
What I was thinking is, to what Councilor Buckler said was, if we can make recommendations as to in some of these areas, rather than us sitting and nickel and diming everything. Is what, for example, you were saying environment, we should be a bit for.
So in the interest of listening to thing, it's important that council goes through this list and to know what you're taking off the list. For your budget to move forward, yes, staff could come back with what should be in each one of those. As we move into summer, you're going to find your deficit is very large. But yes, I would certainly think that's a good idea to just go through the list really quickly and take off. Don't worry about putting in right now, just worry about taking off. Or reducing it, something that needs to be reduced.
Eventually get a new list.
Very quick.
The one that should be added to. Emergency measures. It had 60,000 strong in 2017.
So the emergency measures, you wouldn't normally have a dedicated reserve for it. You're going to take it out of your general reserve, and that's going to be replenished when your grant comes. Basically, that's what's gonna happen.
The reason I was originally put in is because government funding generally only kicks in once you hit 3% of your personal tax levy. So that amount, 3% will be originally set aside, so that we would have that number there to show that, yes, we either use this or we've accounted for horrible, just so that you can pay your expenses ahead of time. It doesn't, it can definitely be general revenue, but at one point the complaint was, we've got all this money in the months for. And that's why the rates, all the funds came from over the years.
So leave that with us and we'll come back to that one. And the document recruitment is suggested it will go away as it went again. So maybe Michelle will start just through them. Then that way you're writing and getting accounts. Recreation, so there was a plan to put $4,000 in recreation a year as a reserve. And I think we created that at one point, but it's one you want to leave in that place because we will, we've had some opportunities, for example, hub equipment purchase for it. And have the hub grant for the trailers, so there hasn't been a need to put stuff into that, but in the future, yes. So the 2004 pickup truck is gone. Equipment, there's a general which can stay there. None of the Sterling will disappear. It will become a new truck, and it will start with basically zero. The 2006 that is now a reserve truck. It doesn't have anything there. It's one we're going to be selling. T6 is a truck that exists, and we're going to keep that one. The T7, yeah, the T8 will disappear as we said. The T10 is gone. The T18 continues. It's one of the newer trucks too. It's 2018. The Raider continues with TR2. The loader continues, the Class 2 loader. The Volvo backhoe, it stays. The Volvo excavator stays. The float stays. And the JD tractor, tractor and national tractor all staying. In 2019, pickup truck stays. 2019 Star stays. And then you get down to the roads, and this is what you have, other than what you talked about putting in today. If your road reserve is basically 3 named roads: Burnt Road, Left Cemetery, and Shaw Woods. Left Cemetery, Burnt Road has $20,000 reserve, and Shaw Woods has $40,000. And then you have a regular reserve, which is more general, which is $638,000, which you might reserve in slots, which we will come out of. And then a reserve $14,000 for sidewalks. So we will come back with a list of what you should have in each one of those reserves. Right now, we have suppers ready, been cooking. And we're gonna have a little supper break. And if council would like to discuss these reserves during that break, and we're gonna go and check on how we have to do this, whether we're going to have a server or we're going to serve the town. I don't know what's out there. Roasted pig on a bit, I'm not sure. So you think for a minute, if you have any questions, we can ask Michelle, and then we'll break the meeting.
So James, don't have me go through Zoom and actually sign in and send it. And hopefully that'll work.
So basically, if you go into Zoom, you can type signing in.
But you have to, I didn't sign in, I never signed up on this stuff yet, but.
Well, thing is, if you don't, you have to in your. If you go to the actual
Yeah.
when you're on.
That's what we were saying. We just change it.
Yeah.
Click on the license or name the computer.
You know, it's not easy.
We have two million, 581,000 cash on hand. Yeah,
Oh, that hasn't been updated, that was just in Daniel's report, so that was just where the reserve presently.
and numbers are changing.
Yeah.
It's like numbers.
Really? We really need, about a company or saying that's.
That might be not, that would be the students. But I think that,
Would you like to do an official recess?
Yeah, okay, we'll take a recess, I guess half an hour, 20 minutes, or 20 minutes. Okay, welcome back, and Matt has updated some of our numbers on reserves, so I will turn that back over to Michelle to list.
So I can tell from the numbers I'm going to read.
Yeah. So what I did is I put some numbers in to make it a little more realistic where we should be this places. Council should note that these reserves are not encompassing of everything the municipal owns. So we will be creating new reserves. In that future discussion, probably with the asset management plan, you're going to see. So the administration building, or building maintenance is basically this area here, which includes all the buildings here. So we have some roof issues that are going to come up very soon. We need to have 45,000 to have very soon with the municipal building and the sand shed. And I think when we do the asset management plan, we're going to divide those things up a little bit. The municipal hall is Golden Lake. And 40,000 is comfortable there, and there will be some major repairs eventually. 3,000. We did take money out of the new fire hall, and we did increase the regular Rankin Fire Station and Golden Lake Station, which includes the Deacon. And that Rankin support group will be gone. And the working funds, realistically, those working funds include replacement equipment, and there's replacement equipment that comes up. Having $300,000 there is a minimal amount that's going to be able to help you when you do come to those next few years of time. Policing, of course, is gone, and we have increased the Shaw transfer site over $20,000. Safe water will be gone. Emergency measures, and Councilor Buckle explained why that was originally there. Basically, just even about $5,000. That money may be more that's taken from general reserve, but placeholder 5,000 is there. Recreation, and the intent was that 4,000 we would put into recreation every year. So this council thought that 4,000 was going in every year. So basically, I'm just putting in the debt plus which realistically, when you're looking at equipment, what we've done with the 16,000 or some equipment. So realistically, we need the 25,000. The 2007 Sterling, one is going away and becoming a new truck this year, but the other one has to be replaced within the next 2 years. It's over $300,000 for a truck. Comfortably putting 30,000 away for the next 2 years will get you to that truck. 2018, you just need to start building up your reserve because you're never going to get to a $65,000 truck in 10 years. The motor grader of 2013, tired grader. I know the council wants to get a few more years out of it, but it's
$100,000 for a new grader. If you put $10,000 away, it's 40 years to get your grader, so you need to get those numbers moving up. The Komatsu loader, pretty comfortable where it is, and Volvo loader backhoe. If we continue to make contributions, it's in a good place. The Volvo excavator for 2002 is becoming a very tired machine. Turntable is issues, that machine needs to be replaced in the next year or so. Should be probably at the latest 2.5 years from now. The coyote tractor, it's getting to the point where it should be replaced or modified. So we put $25,000 into there. The newer Western Star of 2019, we put 20 in a year. So if we look at the 20-year thing, you'll have $200,000 in. Sorry, 400,000. This will get you to a place where you can replace these trucks. So these are new trucks, but you need to start doing reserves on those. And that cemetery. And this will be a bigger discussion. Council, but as you do roads and you do a new road, you need to start putting your money into those reserves to do the repairs eventually. So that cemetery is one of your most expensive assets. So $25,000 to start your reserve. That asset management plan is going to generate the number that you need to put in there. But I thought that is just to show you that we do need to be putting money away for roads. And for whatever reason, and I don't know the history, Woods has a reserve of $40,000. That's probably where the reserve should be for that road. And you have 180 other roads that are identified. Woods was for some reason, maybe because of the street here. So you have the general reserves, and your asset management plan is going to generate a lot more new reserves. That should be coming into your next year, basically. So it doesn't address anything outside of this page.
Yes, that's a very.
So how can we ensure moving forward that we'll always be putting that money to reserves? Just as you gave the example of recreation, where, you know, we assume that that money's going in, and how can we be assured that we have to do it every year? Do we have to make something down?
So part of the legislation is going to control that. The other part of it is you authorize purchasing asset management software. When you put that asset in the software, it will generate that contribution every year. So there will not be a loss of something. And basically, if you recall Daniel saying, you know, reserves go to the village council. So if council doesn't say it, doesn't go in there. But if you have an asset management plan that's electronic, that generates its own numbers, once you start the formula, it will automatically put it in there for you every time. And you will have the amount that you want at the end.
For the fire department, we just have reserves, but we don't have any reserves for the vehicle, but we should have.
So,
The same we do for public works.
yes, now where it is the working capital for the fire department? Working funds? And it says 151, and we've added up, we've plotted up to 300. Because 151 is not going to buy you a fire truck. So that's why we went up, because we needed to go up for purchasing equipment in the future. So possibly that working funds can be changed to rolling stock and equipment, or
Should that perhaps be set up the same as roads is?
and I think that's where your asset management plan is going to go in the future. Every asset, your 190 roads are going to be in there. Each one of your trucks, each one of your buildings, but right now, this is your reserve sheet. So rather than come up with a whole bunch of things, you're just fixing this one.
Not the wrong.
But with the changes that you're making, you still have a shortfall. That's
Right.
Before even going into that research.
Right. So yeah, there's a good cost to this. So that's what council makes, that's what you're going to look at, deciding going forward.
So I'm assuming these are the ones that Daniel did, they must go into resolution, into a reserve account. Do we have to do some kind of resolution to change?
So your resolution is going to be tonight, and you created this. And it's going to, be above any other resolution that was created. You're creating this number.
So like this one supersedes all of the.
Basically, yes.
So, which you alluded to, and councillors talked about, we're saying that this is what it is now, but how can we make sure that it automatically gets done? I know you said asset management, and we'll do that, but do we need to have something firm and steadfast that we don't forget?
So, yes, that software is going to remind, so look at the bigger picture. And I'm just gonna go a little bigger story. We know, and people alluded to it in the last 3 years, that your asset management shortfall is huge. And, you know, just taking that road deficit, this stuff on paper is $50 million. It's not gonna do that. But you gotta start somewhere. So you're going to fix this page, because this is all you have. And getting it done for next year is, you can have a bylaw just for this sheet to do that. And that in 2021, January 1st, or whatever date you want to put on it, this sheet is reviewed again. And the contributions are reviewed. Unfortunately, any council, anytime can change. But if you set a date for this comes back to council, and this can come back for the budget, that you're going to set those reserves. And as the information that the public works coordinator is doing, as we get it into that software, it's going to generate a document that's going to say we're or whatever it is. Yeah, this is how we can get there. And we know that we're not going to be able to increase taxes 8% or 6%, but there's going to be a plan to start moving ahead. And this is number one, it's just fixing what you have for this line, and then start adding to it. And yes, it's the diligence of council to put something in place to make sure. And that the plan that we, which is a 3-year plan, it identifies that too. It identifies that if there's a surplus in, for example, recreation, that surplus would go back into general funds, but that same amount would be put in reserves, recreation, and then you put it in the box. You're creating safeguards to protect your buckets.
So the asset management works something like this. So if we look at our election, put anything out and say, this is going to be the same amount we're going to contribute every year, right?
Yeah.
And then there might be one I'm just saying, like, let's just say emergency measures. Let's just say we want to keep it at 5,000. We're happy with that because if an emergency ever comes, we're going to feel that 5,000 can carry it from 1 year, and if we have to use it, then the following year we can add it. And you then put in the asset management. The contribution will be 0.
You can do that. So the program that you're looking at, the software that you're looking at, is so thorough that you can have a failure on that cemetery. And it would incorporate that failure and change the date because a repair was done. That asset gets rebuilt. So every time there's some maintenance done, every time we do something, it's put into that plan. As long as you keep putting the information.
And just for council's information, that has to, all of these, as Andrew talked to, every truck, every building, every asset that the municipality owns has to be in that asset management plan with a repayment schedule based on X number of years by 2023. The government, the province wants it to be a 10-year plan to start. Now, you can build a plan out, I think the county goes out 30 years, but for the financing part, they only build it out 10 years at a time.
So could we ever see an asset management plan, maybe saying, we're never gonna buy a grader again, we're just gonna contract that out, and then how would that be? Does that come under something else?
So this equipment and there's formulas for equipment. And I have something on for any piece of equipment, you know, a simple one, you have to call $1,000 a year. But the cost of renting a grader for us may be too high. But yet you can put an asset in your plan.
Right.
You can go, for the next 5 years, we will have a grader, and after 5 years, that grader's taken off the plan. And you can
Right.
do,
We're gonna contract.
you can do any of that, you can do whatever you want in the plan.
Yes.
So we have, or I was starting to figure it out, but I didn't get it done. So based on where we are and where we should be, yeah, what's the total, the bottom of the should be? We have the funds that we found that we can move.
$1,207,000.
How much?
$1,207,000 is the should be.
That's the total, but some of that money is already there, so.
That's
that would
one
bring-
and two.
would bring that
Unless
number.
the 182, you're still looking.
No, I don't even think it would be. a
No,
million.
it's not that much. Maybe just- It should be,
$1,025,000.
that was not,
That's half of the road.
I use my phone. But we can lessen that amount by moving some of the, to the unallocated and other funds, right?
Yeah, that's, I want to find out where our total is on the should be.
Yeah, the should be is 1,207.
That's the total though, that's not the. See, some of the money's already in there.
Oh, okay, I think those.
Like, see, like the 15,000 is already in there, so it's only 30,000.
Well, I.
oh, okay, so you're gonna go
Yeah.
plus minus 10.
Yeah.
Plus, just press plus.
Oh.
Oh. Press the plus sign. Plus the 40, and then go to 45. And then minus. And go over 10. That's your point. And it's the enter. Now I'm going to take that formula down to each of the ones you want to have. Copy it. So copy. Space. Press Alt C. No, back up to 30,000. Alt C.
Let's just
And
say
then
somebody,
go down to the
I don't know, they have a trailer up and rolling for the dogs, right?
D.
And then you keep it there so long, and then you take it to the SPCA.
Should they are to.
Like,
Yeah.
take it to a vet to get it moved.
They have, yeah.
And is that what happens? And it gets-
Basically, that is yes.
Like,
There
if
as
they,
well.
if they don't call the dog, if somebody
Oh.
doesn't.
Well, depends on why the dog.
Copy
And then push it through.
and just
But
paste.
it might be
But
somewhere,
not-
you gotta keep them slow.
They do have time.
And do it again.
I force you.
They want to the number 2 out of 2 then. Oh, there you go.
That would be, you know,
That's the only 2 off any amount.
Okay.
Yeah,
5 something.
543, 543.
Andrew, do you get to pick the dog tags, like the, like this, no, I just thought, like, I think we've had them on before, sometimes there's birds. They
You
just,
get 9, 6, 7, 11.
no, but they just send you they just send you this, you don't actually get them, or,
I can go 70, 40 different.
really?
What that implies.
It's good. Now, I got 14, 13, and 15. So only 15 people drop their dog tags. How many dog tags do you order?
How many dogs?
They're kind of cute.
Did you take into account the,
Mine is in there.
Oh, okay.
Mine
This is
mine's
quite-
already down.
Oh,
did you take the one you took from it? That's. Minus. That's. Yes. We're off by dollars, sir.
543, 546. That's the number I want. That's the one that you guys got.
So that's,
That's the, should be.
That's the current shortfall for this year.
but this list.
That could be based on what we have.
But we're missing one then, because the election one, I think, should be more. And they're not, and so we're gonna find out where that money is.
When we saw that new truck again, tow truck, we're going to be taking another 60,000 for another 2 7.
So anything you sell will go to general revenue, then you just come back and over to her. Then you'll again have, put the bucket where it's going to be.
So the $60,000 will go towards a new truck.
The $60,000 you're taking out of here. Or $50,000 you get from home.
No, it's for a T7, we have 2 of them here, and we have 60. In the market, we have 60,000 for both of them.
And yes, we're going towards the new truck. So that 60 could be, well, it's already been taken, so it's only 190 now. The 60 is already taken off.
In order to cover 543, we need approximately 17%. Increase on the left. Good luck. trying to-
Who wants to take that motion?
No, who wants to stand in front of Orange one? And
And that's still not the address. Vote is done.
second is. So we've already addressed the plan in the budget to reserve,
Yes,
and but this one would be,
this is, that was for roads.
I know,
This is.
Bill, other.
Equipment, yes.
So we can use reserve not posted in May. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't include
Oh, that's a few going up slow.
Mr. Mayor,
So can I suggest that council has done their due diligence and reviewed this? And you can note it. That this is your shortfall on this list. And then council can decide if council wants to make a contribution to reserves study. This type of thing, and it would just get funds that you've already noted this. So basically, you fix something, and then you put your contribution to reserves that you believe your tax base will support. And then you cover two things, you fix one thing, you know, you can't, you know, you're not gonna raise it 70%, you should know that.
Yes, that's a bucket.
just a question, so this is your, this should be, that's your best estimate of where that reserve fund should be as of this time next year. Do you see any significant increases to any of those, or do you see a more reasonable 1 year?
So what you're going to be going down to is down to 1 year. One of the reasonable, that's the word. And, right now you're fixing a shortfall, so if you look at the motor grader. So you have $100,000, that's 62. If you look at a motor grader, just as an example. If a motor grader costs $400,000, how much do you have to put a year to buy one at $10,000? And put $10,000 a year. So is it 10 years that you replace a motor grader? That is going to be 40,000. So get to a number that at least you can build on.
So where I'm going with this question. What if? We took $500,000 reserve contribution for roads. Assigned it to these reserves, which would bring us almost where we want to be. And then pick a percentage that we would put into road reserves. That would put, because realistically, the road reserves were never going to.
So, but I remember there was a rationale behind $500,000. Rationale was that province that required to do the asset management on roads first. And by putting 10% away, 500,000, you can have a good argument that it's fine. Or if you put nothing away, then you don't have an argument.
Yeah.
so I get where Andrew came with these and the importance of, I also get that next year, the amount at the end wouldn't be as great because we built that larger pool to begin with, right? Yes?
Yes.
So then why can't we spread this over another year? So instead of it being 550,000, it's 275,000. Do you know what I mean? I know you're setting very realistic things that we can achieve and add to it, but I'm just saying, can we absorb half this year and half next year?
That's all 8%.
No, but I mean, we can even look at doing a third, I mean, we got way behind. We got way behind, I mean, I guess that's on us because we should have done a better job, right? But now-
No,
It's
We never address these like reserves and do it like we are right now, where now we can see it a lot more in black and white. So I'm just saying, is there a way that we can spread it out and pay not everything in 1 year to get us caught up to where we should have.
Councilor Robbins.
Sort of to add on to what was just said, Councilor Rector, is we are also doing, a 3-year budget.
Plan, but a plan.
Yeah, just a plan. When we're doing that, I think this should be incorporated in it.
I agree.
Okay, because it's realistically, we're not gonna be able to fund 543,000 in 1 year. We know that, that's our reality. But we can put a plan, say, you know, what can we get to from here for this year? We have an extra 182,000. Massage it and up the, you know, and maybe that we could get assistance and staff to say, okay, like we're gonna do year 1, we're gonna do this, year 2, we're gonna do this, and so on, to get to where we need to get. Because we know that we can't go in, as you said, do a 17% increase. But we have to do something. We have to act.
So over 3 years, 6% each year.
Something like that.
We do have to realize though, hopefully our township's gonna grow. Right?
Yes,
So it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be 6% each year, it could be 5% each year.
it could be. But I'm saying, well, we have to start at a point. Because yes, had we known when we first came on council that this was in such a dire situation, we might have started doing 6% back then. You know, and our objective at the time had seemed, okay, we should have like a 0% increase. Well, 0% is not doing us any favor, and it's not assisting in the management of the township. So now that we recognize this, I think we need to address it, but address it really fairly to the residents.
Councilor Rector.
So in the beginning, didn't we have like $84,000 or $83,000 that we didn't spend in last year's budget that we put into reserves this year? And that was because, for why, like, I mean, we anticipate something like that happening next year where we budgeted for X amount of dollars and we're going to put X amount into reserve because we never spent it. So I'm just saying, like, when we talk about 1% gives us 31,000. Well, 3% gives us $86,000. Well, in actual fact, we nearly had 86,000 for 3%. We had it back. You know what I'm trying to say?
No.
Okay, well, we had $84,000 that we didn't spend that we budgeted for last year, right? If I look at 3% on a levy, that's $93,000. 2% is $62,000. And just saying, in what we're doing, right? Kind of a backwards way. It's really important to take into account, we didn't spend that much, and those are monies that we're bringing back in. I don't want to over tax somebody and put it up so much that then it becomes also a burden, right? Because there's a fine line between keeping our residents in here and residents leaving because maybe they can't afford. And I know Michelle said the average home was $203,000. You know, I know my home and the lake lot is not $203,000.
Yes, and
So just maybe the health council, and what we're doing. This isn't the first time you've heard of it. Council president. This is the third budget. But what's going to happen because of the work that you've done, has been good work. You've now gone to the point where you're how you. No matter what planning you do this year, next year, you're going to have realistic plans to see where you are. And it could be, well, going to be, you know, very, very high number. But this year, because you don't know that we're doing a plan in place, the reasonable thing to do would be to make a contribution to reserves based on what you believe you can sell. You have to put something in, but you're not going to fix the sheet. You identify it as a good thing. You've got the problem being That's for your asset management. And so the only thing that you could really do tonight is to look at what contribution to reserves, whether it be a token contribution or a large contribution, that you believe that can be added to this budget that you've already done.
And just some of the budget figures that have been released from some of the other municipalities, they range anywhere from 2.5% to, I think Laurentian Valley was one of the highest, it's probably around 7%. The only one that's coming in at zero that I'm aware of at this point is McNabb Racing. They had growth of about 75%. So that covers basically your increase.
But when the next assessment comes out to, for our property, so we should have done this year, because we never got done with this program last year. It's really going to take a chance to do. Just look at the pace of the selling for this area, every year. It's really going to affect the assessment.
Yes, I don't think that it's going to catch up. It's not.
No, it don't make a difference.
And everybody's right, the assessment, if it goes up, it's very more money. Council Director Schonberg said at the end of the year, for operations budget, and that's already built into the plan. That any surplus at the end of the year goes back into reserves. So again, it's having that plan that addresses those items. And we could say that it's going to take us 3 years at 6% to get to where we need to be. But every year you take a look at it and say, well, we've gained here or here, we don't have to do that. We could do 3 or we could do 4.
What if? We did 5% for this year. 4% for next year. Because we don't really want to time these council can do with. Either, maybe us, maybe someone else. But that would put us to 179,000 to the existing shortfall.
Michelle, what was the average increase of 1% on your $200,000 house? In the very beginning, you said like an increase of 1% levy on a house, which is a little over $200,000.
Yeah, so 1% of $200,000.
Yeah.
So a 5% increase.
So like I'm paying down a $400,000 house and you're looking at $140,000. Because I also know that our area to the managed forest has gone up much more. That percent wise, along with agricultural land has gone up. When you look at the stats, I guess it doesn't really matter because we don't generate a lot of monies that way, but it actually improves the payment taxes. That's for sure.
The one advantage we do have in our municipalities, we don't have water and sewer, which in a lot of the budgets that the larger municipalities present, that's a separate calculation from the levy. And some of them are 2 to 3% increases, so when we start adding, when they have to add that all together. Yes, it makes a much bigger difference. At least we don't have to worry about water and sewer.
I guess the question is, 2 to 5% big.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Can we live with that?
And is there anything else in the bill budget where we could save over years? It gets me back to vehicles, it gets me back to the CMC. Certain things here that maybe we have to learn, we can't, it's nice to have them, but do we need them? And maybe it's fun, we have to start to trim. And like, I know it's not a thing that people like to do, but it's like a balance, right? Between asking people and trimming. And I know, I guess it's just inevitable that people have to pay more taxes, but.
I think the fleet staff has done a pretty good job at trimming where trimming can happen. I mean, you're right, maybe we can find 40 or 50,000, but it doesn't bring you anywhere close to the
No, but I was,
500,000 that we need.
no, but I was thinking $40,000 or $50,000 multiplied by 4 years, it's considerable, multiplied by 10 years is even more considerable. Like, there's certain things in education that have definitely been downsized, and that's been because the monies aren't available like they used to be. And we're still managing to graduate people and stuff.
So just a suggestion, I mean, if that's the route council wants to go, you can eliminate that plow truck at 350,000. You can increase the time it takes to follow our roads, because we'd still be above the minimum maintenance standard. So instead of getting all the roads done in 8 hours, maybe it takes you 12 hours. How well will residents accept that? That's the other big question, because I had calls the second snowfall this year that Traymore Road wasn't cleaned up soon enough.
Sometimes I do think that's just an ongoing battle and everybody wants the road done. And I remember one of the first discussions we had, it was like, there's minimum road standards, right? And we go beyond the minimum road standard in a number of. And it's unfortunate that there hasn't been more public involvement in the different times when we've tried to get public involvement. Basically, you're right, Mayor, it should be like, do you want your roads cleaned quicker? Or do you want to increase your tax levy? Like, because there's a pool of money that we gotta deal with.
And that's what it comes down to, because Deep River is a good example. They have their own police department. And they insist that they want it, even though, from the council's perspective, in a lot of cases, it's very, very costly and could be done cheaper, but their residents want it, so. Yeah. Yeah, Councilor Roberts.
I know we're debating this levying that we have to do to address this issue. I think we also need to bear in mind just how much we're going to have to be levying when we finish the full asset management plan and the shortfall that we're going to be dealing with. This is minuscule compared to that.
It is.
And if we're going to start penny pinching at this point in time, what are we going to do? Is this 10, 15 million shortfall is there?
And I mean, our residents made that clear with Chris Mill Road. They wanted that road. We originally planned to turn it back to town.
And
The residents said, they wanted service. You don't mind paying extra taxes.
exactly.
But we have to remember, then to really get back to where, I know like BB does it and other ones, it's very like, you want your road done, that's fine. It's gonna cost you, the residents on that road, X amount of dollars. Because this way I look, they complained a lot. They went on a road tour, they got their road done. So, maybe somebody on Marsh Road, they feel their road needs to be done, or Point Church Road, that road's getting bad. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like, all of a sudden, it's like, when it's important to me, then I'll speak up and I'll carry. But if it's not, then it's like, go ahead and do whatever you want.
I think that's where what we're talking about now is the service review, which I'm planning on doing during this year. And that's why the first step was to fill out that sheet on what services we would expect our municipality to deliver. I guess we have to look at that and say, okay, do we want to start stroking them off? Or do we want to, focus on more growth? That's really where we need to be going, is, growing our development.
At this point, Mr. Mayor, we're getting close to
I know.
time for our next meeting. That would propose 5% this year.
Are you moving that as a resolution?
5% to the reserve.
I can't support that, but I think you're getting 5.5%. I think Bill, we came in as a 0%.
Maria or Councilor Robinson?
I'm thinking 5 might be a little high. That's what we did last year.
5.5%.
Yeah.
But you have to realize not everybody gets COLA. So like, then you look in that in the last 2 years, you know, how that might increase, it's getting more substantial. No, but you work in a job where you get the COLA every year, right? No, you don't. Because I mean, I never got the COLA for a number of years, and I know a number of people get it. You know, and then, but yet hydro goes up, your insurance is going up, the gas is going up. So in the end, the amount of monies that you have aren't there. We're just figuring it out.
I hear what you're saying, Jan, and yes, it's difficult, but we can either make the decisions to try and start the ball rolling with a reasonable amount, actually going to make a change. Or we can just say, no, we can't afford, our people can't afford anything. There's gotta be a middle ground there somewhere. Because we have to run a township. And as difficult as that is to realize that, yes, it's going to make it difficult for some people with their expenses. That's why we put our names in, to be able to make the best decisions we can, recognize it. But at the end of the day, we have to run this matter. And we've seen how far behind we are on a road funding, what the deficit is there. We can show tonight what the deficit is in our designated reserve position. We saw from the difficult it was. Well, we put more money into roads than staff recommended, which speaks to the nature of our roads. They need to work. We need to do it. And that money has to come from somewhere. And like everything else, there's only one taxpayer. And unfortunately, that's us and the people that put us here.
See, the one thing a long time ago, and I had a hard time getting it through my head. When we talked about reserves, for me, reserves were monies that we had at hand, either in GICs, another form of investment, tax and arrears, or money in the bank. So basically, we don't have the money that we've allotted in our different pails and buckets. And so there's been something inherently wrong for a long time. And so we've had money designated for reserves, but we don't have those needs. How does that happen?
One of the, I can explain part of that. One of the issues that I talked about the previous 4 years of council, I did certainly speak about making regular levy increases. What was happening was projects that were identified weren't getting done, that money, but turned back into reserves. So it gives you a false sense that your reserves are increasing, when in actual fact, that project still has to be done, whether you do it this year or 2 years down the road. You don't really have, you're not really building that reserve because it's money that was designated for that particular project.
And frankly, that's the reason why we've been able to $178,000 extra road construction this year. It's because the work wasn't done before, and when I was there, it's gonna get harder in the coming years. If we don't start soon, it's gonna be impossible. That reality. Reserves and raising the levy to keep the reserve was an issue back when I was on council 15 years ago. Nobody wanted to raise taxes. Because we're moving forward. Here we are 15 years later having the same discussion. And we've raised taxes and we still have rate fears. May not be happy, I know I'm not happy. You know, I'm not happy.
But it still comes down to the fact is, why did we overspend on reserves when we had money earmarked for reserves? Like, who's in charge of reserves?
We haven't overspent. You see that in the deficit.
$400,000. If I wanted to cash in all these, then what I should have, like, if I looked at this figure that Daniel created, and let's just say it's $1 million, but then when I add up all my little bins, I need $2 million. Well, like, to me, that's not what the reserves are supposed to be. The reserves should be money in the bank, so when I want that $1 million, I can get it. And it's not there, right? And I get it, because some of these were redundant to begin with, I guess, right? And then you're taking, but to me, it's just doesn't keep us, you know?
But we're moving in the right direction, and that's what the asset management plan will do, is keep you on, get you in that plan to move things forward. So I'm hearing there's no support for 5, then that's Councilor Robinson.
I'm recommending 4.
The amendment 5 down to 4.
Second.
We have a resolution.
I could read the resolution.
Sure.
Be it resolved that the council directs the clerk treasurer to adjust the presented budget. And increase on the-
For the resolution, we'll call the vote. Councilor Buckwell,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
That's high, Thursday, but we hit the 5.5. I would go with 3.
got an oath.
No,
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
Councilor Edwards,
No,
yes, so. That's carried. I have a resolution that bylaw 2021-14 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for February 16, 2021. Be read at first and second time the 16th day of February 2021. Comments or questions? Seeing none, be read a third time and pass the 16th day of February 2021. And I'm going to move in a second, moved by Councilor Burke, seconded by Councilor. Councilor Buckle,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
yes,
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
Councilor Reddy Junko.
yes,
And yes. Carried. I have a resolution. This budget meeting adjourns at 6:44 p.m. I'm gonna move here in a second. Moved by Councilor Buckle, seconded by Councilor Reddy. Councilor Buckle,
Yes.
Councilor Burke,
yes.
Councilor Robinson,
Yes.
Councilor Reddy Junko.
yes.
And yes, that's carried. Thank you. We will be back on in 15 minutes.